Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and do you keep having those memories pop up in your head of the past? And it's a constant reminder of your past sins. My goodness, give us a call, 877-757-9424. We're talking all about this on The Next Right Thing with Debbie Giorgianni and Adam Blai. Good morning.
Good morning, Keith. Thanks so much. Yes, I agree with you. Folks should call in if they struggle with the past. The number to dial quickly, though, because we only have a little less than a half an hour, we'd like to get to some calls, is 877-757-9424. Please call in. We're standing by waiting to receive your call. Adam, good morning to you.
Good morning, Debbie.
Adam, I wanted to start with this quote, if I may, because we're noticing a lot in the life coaching ministry work we do, that a lot of people are coming to us sharing that they just are having these ruminating thoughts of their past. They just can't let go of their past. And then, Adam, you have spoken a lot about this during the spirit world, about how the demons will use that as an opportunity. But before we begin, I wanted to share this because I think that those that struggle with the past, because it can be very paralyzing, those negative thoughts that are attached to it, I think they should definitely print this quote out and put it on their refrigerator so to remind them. I think it is one of the best quotes I've ever heard. It's from Pope St. John Paul II, and it was at a Mass for World Youth Day in Toronto in 2002. And John Paul II, the quote goes like this: "We are not the sum of our weaknesses and failures. We are the sum of the Father's love for us and our real capacity to become the image of his Son, Jesus." And I love that quote for so many reasons, as you know, Adam, because I think oftentimes people will carry their past like baggage, like suitcases with them. And they're just they feel like they're being defined because of their past, and they're never going to get over that. And so there's no way to rewind the clock. There's no way to go back, but there's so many things we can do going forward. And I'd really love for you to touch upon those things to help people have their most freeing life today.
Sure. So the first thing, Deb, I would say is don't be anxious about the idea that the demonic can be involved in remembering your past sins and kind of beating yourself up emotionally about that or psychologically about that. Just because you think about your past sins or you kind of feel guilty about them still doesn't mean you're being affected by demons in an extraordinary way. We do learn lessons about this from the exorcism world, which, remember, possession is hyper rare. You know, just because you have thoughts about your past doesn't mean you're possessed, even remotely. But we do learn lessons about how the enemy operates with this. So there's a spiritual layer to this, and there's a psychological layer to this. The regular psychological layer is, yes, it's true, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. That's a truism, and that is true. However, what you said that John Paul II had you quoting John Paul II there is very true. I think the Christian anthropology, the Christian worldview, is to look forward and be optimistic about our potential self, which is a more Christ-like self, as we move forward in our conversion through life and get closer and closer to God, as opposed to looking back and being basically stymied and stopped because we just feel bad about our past. So there's all these layers to this. It's a very rich experience because life is a rich experience. Okay. So the enemy does want us to be mired in the past, and they want us there. Why, Deb? The main thing is, their goal is for us to give up on Christ's mercy, to give up on his love for us, to think, I'm not worthy of him. I've been so bad. He's given up on me already. Why would he ever help me? Why would he give me his grace? Why would he forgive me? You know, I've fallen so many times. He's done with me. The enemy wants you to get to that place because then you're basically helpless. You are avoiding God's grace as best you can. Now, of course, you can't completely avoid God's grace. You're alive. You're thinking and living and breathing. You're experiencing grace. But the enemy wants you to imagine that you're not receiving that you're not participating with Jesus. Does that make sense, Deb?
Absolutely, and that's one step away from falling into deep despair, which is where they want all of us, correct?
Exactly. And so, a key concept, whether you're Catholic or not, you can really, I think, learn a lot from the idea of confession, the way it is understood in the Catholic Church, that the sacrament of confession, it requires what? Yeah, you're saying you're sorry to God through a priest of his church, but here's the critical thing. You're sorry, yes, because you want to avoid punishment, but hopefully more because you don't want to disappoint Jesus, that you want him to be pleased with you.
Right.
Secondly, you make a firm amendment to make some changes in your life so that you don't do that sin again. If that part isn't there, you shouldn't be absolved of that sin. You can't sin and go in and say, I'm sorry, rinse and repeat, knowing that you're just going to go back to it and indulge in that sin again. So confession becomes a transformative process. It's kind of like therapy in the sense that you're going into therapy to change your life. You're learning techniques and exploring this in order to change. Okay, so you're trying to build new habits, a new future you.
Well, Adam, that's why it's a healing sacrament. It does heal so many of the wounds and things that we carry with us. And a lot of people are filled with guilt and shame and embarrassment and all sorts of things. And it's interesting. There's a meme floating around Facebook right now, and I'm trying to quickly pull it up because these images, these posts go around so fast. You have to try to search for them. But there was a meme going around that really stuck with me. They talked about how if you have a lot of guilt, if you're struggling with a lot of guilt, go to the Blessed Mother. I would have never thought of that. It's kind of interesting. They said, go to the Blessed Mother, go to our spiritual mother. She will comfort that. She will take care of that. She will help you in ways. And I find that so beautiful. We're coming up on the month of May, and I would love for our listeners to grow deeper in their relationship with the Blessed Mother, because she offers so many amazing things to us for our spiritual lives. But she cares about us. She cares about all her children so very much. And like a mother, when you have a child who feels guilty about something, mothers always try to, after they get done with being upset with the child, they try to comfort the child because they want the child to go on and succeed. They don't want to hold the child back, right, Adam?
Yeah, exactly. And the maternal drive, the maternal instinct is so strong and overcomes so many difficulties in relationships and boy. So yes, Mary, heaven in general, all the figures of heaven want us to get up, dust ourselves off, and move forward. Okay, a few things though. What might we do practically to try to overcome some of this being stuck in the past? One is to try to really process, remember, embody, really just sit with the idea that when we are forgiven by Christ, particularly in the sacrament of confession, because that we know sacramentally it has a very definitive action, God truly has forgiven us. And not only has God truly forgiven us, but we've received grace to move forward and do better in the future. Truly forgiven us in the sense that sin is gone. When we have, done a good confession, those sins are absolutely gone. We are back in a very pure state. Now, we're human beings. We're not going to stay completely pure for long. That's the nature of living in a fallen world. But you have an opportunity to start again. And you can't just always look back. Now, yes, you need to be aware of where your weaknesses were in the past and guard against them. You can think of regular allegories for that, like drinking. People say avoid people, places, and things associated with drinking because you've had a weakness there in the past. Sure, you're going to do things like that because we have a psychological layer to us in life too. The spiritual layer is very clear because of the sacraments Jesus has established in his church. There are certain spiritual kind of transactions that go on in terms of forgiveness that are definitive, but we still have to wrestle with our human nature. So we need to be wise as we move forward, Deb. And that's the psychological piece of this. And I know you with your life coaching can speak to this. Mm-hmm. We need to be wise.
Right.
So we can't pretend that we didn't have those proclivities in the past. We have to be smart about how we move forward. And that's what I said earlier, that part of confession is a firm amendment to not do something again and take practical steps to avoid it in the future.
Right.
So it's both. On the spiritual, we're completely forgiven. We're completely clean from that issue. In the human psychological, we need to be wise, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Okay, I hope we get some calls. Let's hold it there, but we'll give our listeners time to call in. If you struggle with the past, we'd like to hear from you. You don't have to give your first name. You can give your confirmation name or a name that you always wished you were called as a child. That's fine. We're waiting to hear from you. 877-757-9424. I know that open phone lines very bright and early in the morning is a little bit odd sometimes on radio, but actually we wanted to do this to make sure we checked in with our Morning Joy listeners. So if you have something to say, please share it this morning. 877-757-9424. And Adam, we'll hold it right there. When we come back, let's talk about having some maybe some guilty feelings, but not becoming guilt. Right? So there's a big difference when it becomes part of your being. That can be problematic. For now, let's send it back to Keith.
All right. Thank you so much, Debbie and Adam. And yes, I remember when you were talking about a meme there, Debbie, the one that pulls up in my head was that of it's like you're going to bed and you're ready to go to sleep, and then your brain just brings up a random cringe memory from the past. And that happens to me so often. So I'm really glad we're talking about this, especially coming up next, having guilty feelings, but not becoming guilt. I'm very excited about this next segment on The Next Right Thing with Debbie Giorgianni and Adam Blai. But hey, maybe you're just tuning in now and you're realizing this is a topic that's very important to you. Go to our YouTube page, GRN Online, subscribe, follow, hit the bell icon so you're notified when any of our shows are going live. So that way you can always go back and rewatch some of these amazing segments with all of our great contributors here on Morning Joy, but also our other shows like A Life Lived Joyfully, Back to the Father, The Spirit World. My goodness, especially The Spirit World with Debbie Giorgianni and Adam Blai. We give you an extra day of them on Saturdays, so make sure to tune in and hit that like button and subscribe button. But yes, coming up next on The Next Right Thing, I mentioned it before, having guilty feelings but not becoming guilt. We're going to talk more on this, and if you have especially a story to share, or maybe you're trying to get through something, give us a call, 877-757-9424. We'll see you right after this break on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and we are continuing the conversation on some of those intrusive, cringe moments of our past, talking all about that with Debbie Giorgianni and Adam Blai this morning on The Next Right Thing. Debbie and Adam, take it away.
Thank you, Keith. If you still want to get in and make a phone call and share about if you struggle with the past, 877-757-9424. But call quickly. We want to cover a couple things, so we're going to have to move very fast at this point. We want to cover forgiving others. We want to cover healthy guilt versus twisted guilt, Adam, because there's so many times that people will call into radio shows and they'll say that, I'm struggling with something, I feel guilty, and now I'm thinking it's going into every area of my life. It's really taking over, and it's debilitating. It's keeping me down. I can't seem to go forward. I can't look forward. You mentioned about confession being such a transformative healing sacrament, and you were spot on. Saint Teresa of Avila used to stand outside of the confessional when her sisters would come out of the confession, and she'd put her hands on, this is how the story goes, she'd put her hands on their shoulders and she'd say, begin again. Now, that all sounds great and it feels great, But like you said, Adam, we have to still deal with our own the way our own makeup is, and our chemistry, and the way we see things. That's why I've said to many people, having somebody, a trusted source in the faith, so like a priest or a deacon or a religious sister or a lay person that you trust, that can be somewhat of a spiritual director, and a good confessor, and also a good life coach or counselor is ideal, because it helps you explore all the different facets of what a person goes through when they struggle with guilt or shame or the past. So that's one thing that I just would say real quickly before we move on to forgiving others, which is very powerful, Adam. And I'd love to hear your comments on this, because it's so important with your extensive mental health background. When you become so obsessed with guilty thoughts, it tends to creep into every aspect of a person's life, their business life, their relationships, because they just have this weight on top of them. What do you say to that?
Yeah, Deb. So one of the things that's beautiful about this, and it's core to Christianity, but it's right there in the Our Father. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who have sinned against us. We know that in the kind of the economy of forgiveness in heaven, God expects us to forgive others, and that is linked to the extent to which God forgives us. But why might that be? Well, there's a lot to that, but one aspect is how this helps us so much. So when I just focus on my own guilt about my own sins, and I struggle to kind of let go of that and forgive myself, even if I've confessed it sacramentally and I've avoided that sin for years, but I'm still struggling to forgive myself, I'm holding on to it. Sometimes forgiving others helps us get out of our own head and get some more perspective. When we go to forgive others, it makes us kind of reflect on how the sins of others made us feel and make us feel right now. The real impact of sin. Why is sin so serious? Well, it violates the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have done unto you, right? At the very simple level. Of course, it's disappointing God, and it's violating God's law, but sin essentially is impacting other people. In most situations, the sins are impacting other people. There are times, like with idolatry, we could sin without anybody else being aware of it but God, and we're harming our relationship with God. But for the most part in life, we feel guilty about things we've done that have hurt other people. So when we work on forgiving, it often gives us more empathy for others. And what does that do? When we consider sinning again, when we struggle with temptation, we have a little bit more awareness of, well, how did my sins affect people in the past? Well, I can get a clue from how other people's sins affected me. And as I've struggled to forgive them, that's when I've really had to go into those feelings and come to terms with them and find a way to transform them and let those sins go that others have done against me. That gives me the empathy for how I affect others. And so it becomes a tool. The next time that I'm struggling with temptation to do this particular sin that's been done against me in the past, I now have a tool to gain some empathy. Because what happens psychologically a lot of times, and we've all gone through this, Deb, we get excited about something that we want, a sinful thing. We get excited about some selfish thing that we want, and we kind of the fever comes over us, and we lose perspective. We get very narrow vision, and we say, I just want this thing, I don't care. Essentially, emotionally, I don't care, I just want this. And we stop thinking about others and the impact on our future self, that I'm going to harm my future by, doing this indulgent thing now. For instance, I'm going to blow a bunch of money buying something I can't afford because I'm just excited and I want it, and I'll think about the consequences later. There's the human version of that, where I'm going to do this thing now because I want it. But by having forgiveness in our lives, it keeps us kind of grounded and keeps our mind aware of how we affect others, and that becomes a tool for us. So it's not about holding on to guilt so much as it is about forgiving others, and that gets us out of our head and also heals relationships in our life, and it opens the door for other people to forgive us. Yes, God has forgiven us through confession, but there's also the human aspect that the priest will often tell us. Go make amends. Go heal those relationships. Go right what you have wronged in other people's lives.
Well, that's what they do in the 12-step program. Often to go back and make amends and to try to heal if you can. But Adam, a lot of people have ruminating thoughts, things that swirl around their heads in the middle of the night, like Keith was talking about, and stuff like that. What would you say? And in coaching, we always share with people this idea of trying to look at it from a different angle. Like you said, try to make it something that is an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for understanding, an opportunity to heal, right? To progress. But it's tough. Some people do need some deep counseling and therapy, because that's a tough situation to be in when it continues to happen and it becomes out of balance. But because I will tell you this, that I know people that, to make amends, sometimes it's with people that have died already. They're gone, like parents and grandparents. So you're not going to be able to actually call them and really speak with them. But that's why prayer is so powerful, and to lean on prayer and to let God do, like you always say, Adam, we put forth the good effort and ask God to step in and fill in the rest, right?
Yeah. And one thing psychologically that we know is very powerful is when we're stuck about guilt, about something from the past, when it's healthy to do so, heal that relationship, go and say you're sorry, write a letter and say you're sorry. Even if, you're not going to become friends again, you're maybe never going to, you're never going to be back where you were in the past, or you're estranged from somebody. Go say you're sorry in some form if it's healthy to do so, if it's not a real toxic, dangerous relationship. By saying you're sorry and trying to heal that from the past and have that interaction of trying to heal that rift, that can kind of take that thorn out of your side that brings you back to it over and over and over again. And one thing we do in psychology, this is something that would be done with in therapy. You wouldn't really do it on your own because you want to be guided through it, but it's this empty chair idea where even if somebody's long gone, we'll have the person imagine they're sitting in the chair across from them and have that dialogue, and then get up and sit in the chair and imagine being that person and having that dialogue back and maybe accepting the apology or processing it.
Right.
And the therapist helping the person through that process. I wouldn't do that on your own, but it's an example of you can sometimes go through the process of saying you're sorry, even if a person isn't there.
Yeah, we do similar things like that in life coaching, and I will tell you, they're very helpful to people, very freeing. So we think the next right thing is, obviously we spoke about confession, we spoke about forgiving others, getting outside of yourself so that it builds that empathy and it becomes a tool that can really help you, free yourself of these thoughts by maybe enlisting a coach or a counselor to help you with these things. So we just wanted to give our 2 cents on this, Keith, and I hope it helps others. And so we'll turn it back to you for now.
Well, it certainly helped me, so I know it's helped somebody else out there. So thank you so much, Debbie Giorgianni and Adam Blai. We can always catch you every single weekday here on Morning Joy, as well as Saturdays on the Spirit World, 10 a.m. Central on GRN Online. But hey, coming up next, speaking of kind of the Spirit World Live that's happening this Saturday, we're going to talk 5 things you might not know about angels.
You're listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.